Welcome back to Clan Brandalorian, guys. I'm the Brandalorian. Let's get into this top 5 video. So we do have a couple other top 5 videos in this channel. There is a playlist. Go ahead and check that out. We do have lightsabers and ships in the Star Wars universe. In this episode, we're going over the top 5 Jedi, in my opinion, of course. So if you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you do agree with me or anything you want to tell me, go ahead and drop it below. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it. All right. So this can be a very touchy subject. There are a lot of Jedi, all the way from way before, in the Old Republic, all the way up into, the years of maybe Rey's Academy. So there's a long lineage, and we get to see one of the best ones in the Skywalker saga. And that kind of entails from Yoda training Count Dooku,
to training Qui-Gon Jinn, to training ObiWan Kenobi, to training Anakin Skywalker, to training Ahsoka Tano, to training Sabine Wren.
And this line is very important to the Skywalker saga. But in this video today, we're just going to go over my list. Let's go through it. Number 5 on my list, give me Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn was, a Jedi of himself. Definitely didn't agree with a lot of the things that the Jedi Council was going through. And of course, that we see in Tales from the Jedi, we've seen that his master, Count Dooku, was tapping into the dark side, showing dark side tendencies from time to time, and ultimately that overcame. But Qui-Gon Jinn was very wise. Qui-Gon Jinn, when you think of a smart, wise master, you think of Qui-Gon Jinn, maybe even Master Yoda. This makes sense. Mace Windu, you can sprinkle those in. If I'm to think of a tried and true Jedi, you think of Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's why he's number 5 at my list. He is, in fact, the one who found Anakin Skywalker, was the one to notice Anakin Skywalker, essentially getting to know him enough to get his midichlorian count, send it back to Obi-Wan, to ultimately finding out that it was double, almost triple the count of Yoda's. And that was unheard of, especially for this time. And if Darth Maul didn't kill Qui-Gon Jinn, we do know that Qui-Gon would have raised Anakin as his Padawan and brought him up through the Force. And I think this would have been a completely different outcome for Anakin Skywalker, maybe never turning to the dark side. But very mindful and one of the best Force-compelling users. He's at number 5. Like I said, this is my list. Number 4. Luke Skywalker. This, of course, is the son of the Chosen One, son of Anakin Skywalker, brother to Leia Organa, best friend to Han Solo and Chewbacca. Luke obviously was one born with this talent, born with the Force, and he was, brought on very late. At the age of 19, he was starting to use the Force, getting into relationship with Ben Kenobi. Later, learning about Master Yoda, getting training. He was also just as arrogant as his father was, especially at this age. Anakin fed for power, as Luke was kind of young and just more ignorant to it. He did show a lot of ignorance, especially with Master Yoda, and Master Yoda had to be like, look, man, if this is how you're going to act towards this, you're never going to succeed, especially with the Force. And Yoda knew that he had all of this given talent. It's definitely stemming from the Skywalker bloodline. This is great for Luke, of course. This helps him out a lot, especially in the original trilogy. It definitely did get him into some trouble, especially in Empire Strikes Back when he goes up against Darth Vader, ultimately losing his arm and losing the fight in general.
Hell no, man. What the fuck?
But a very great character. Of course, he is the limelight of the original trilogy. Darth Vader, some think would be, maybe the lead force of the original trilogy. More so, Luke is basically what the story is surrounding. And a lot of people, especially after the Ahsoka series, look at Luke as a broken Jedi, but that's actually not the case. Luke was getting his learnings from Ben Kenobi and Yoda, so they were once in the Jedi Council at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, so they're teaching him the ways that they learned as well. And it all was very quick, of course. His time on Dagobah was very limited, and the times he actually had with Ben Kenobi in person was very limited. This is good for Luke's character because he's learning the old ways. And of course, he gets his ending, especially in the sequel trilogy, which a lot of people are very controversial about. But when you look at the circumstances, it's kind of hard to shake off. So yeah, I do respect Luke and everything he has with the Force. He does fall at number 4. And I mean, out of all the Jedi, look, being top 4 on that list is very high. So chill on me. So now if we're to kick it into number 3, we're going to go with Yoda. Yoda, of course, is a Grand Master Jedi of the Jedi Council. taught many younglings, and almost every Jedi that we know in the current timeline has all came from Yoda. All of the masters that Yoda has trained eventually trains their younglings. So all of the teachings stem from Yoda. And especially with the Acolyte coming up, I am very excited to see Yoda and see if he ties into the story, which would be great. And then we can really see what Yoda was up to back 100 years before the Phantom Menace. But Yoda was a master by the age of 100, and of course he lives up to about 800 to 900 years old. It was so clear as day that he was one, if not the strongest Jedi to ever exist. Yes, his midichlorian count was second to Anakin's. Yoda was one that had great, immense wisdom, one that trained completely through the Force, one who was able to allow himself to be one with the Force. And it almost shows just alone fighting Count Dooku at the end of Attack of the Clones. The way he's very slow, but once he lets the Force, take a hold of him, he is able to do everything. Backflips, spinning, great defense mechanisms, great offense mechanisms. Yoda definitely has a bag. And Yoda's attacks were almost unbeatable. Of course, in Revenge of the Sith, he does lose to the Emperor, but he had the Emperor beat. It was very clear. It's just Palpatine had the high ground. And I mean, you can joke about that, but essentially imagine if Yoda was head to head with Palpatine, especially in all the chamber seatings, he would be right there. Getting things thrown at you left and right, having to give up because of the numbers. Yeah, Yoda would have won that battle, but he didn't. And I mean, that definitely counts as a strike against him. But sticking right to the premise, I do have Yoda at number 3 on my all-time Jedi list. And I feel like some of the reasonings I gave were just truly flat out the reasons why. Going into number 2, I do have Anakin Skywalker. The entire Star Wars story is about Anakin Skywalker. And like I've said before, he has the highest midichlorian count. He was a Force essence. He was created by the Force, ultimately impregnating Shmi Skywalker through the Force. He was one that was supposed to bring balance to the Force, but his disciplinary actions were his weakness. And we see this time and time again, especially in the prequels, episode 2 and 3, and especially in the Clone Wars. There's a lot of instances where we see, Anakin just not thinking clearly, just wanting to do this instead of, listening to Master Kenobi, listening to Yoda, listening to Padme. He had a lot of disciplinary actions that led him to his downfall. And ultimately, that's what gets to him. Anakin had elite lightsaber skills. He was more of an attack. He would really get you with, the Obi move, the spin moves, and the way he could just deflect any move thrown at him. He was one, especially when he was younger, to kind of pick up on moves late. But as we see going from the first encounter with Count Dooku from Attack of the Clones, and then ultimately to the end in Revenge of the Sith, he learned a lot from the previous battle. And of course, in the Clone Wars animated series, we do see them go at it again, but just the live action appearances shows enough. Imagine if he was still human 100% and was great Lord of the Sith. He would have been 10 times more powerful in my opinion. And of course the suit kept him enraged through this entire time of the Empire. Anakin could have easily been number 1 on this list if he would have stayed, human form going into the Empire as Darth Vader. Anakin was definitely one not to mess with. We see a lot more of that dynamic in the Clone Wars, which makes, his character a lot better. And of course, Hayden Christensen did a great job portraying Anakin and definitely gives you an idea of what the Anakin character was that we've heard about from the original trilogy, especially if you've seen those first before the prequels. You really get to understand how good of a character Anakin Skywalker is from the prequel. Anakin's Force Ghost is still telling his story to this day. We've seen that in the Ahsoka series. Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's great. So yes, Anakin Skywalker, number 2. And just real quick before we get into number 1, here are some honorable mentions. I do have Ahsoka Tano, the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, had a great Clone Wars arc, and we're still seeing how her character is being played out today in the Ahsoka Tano series. She's just not top 5 in my opinion, but very close to the list. Same with Kit Fisto. Very, very interesting character. Seeing him more in the Clone Wars, we get to see his smile in Attack of the Clones, and we get to see him last a little bit longer than Egan Kolar and Saesee Tiin. He's just one of those characters you look at and you're like, he's dope. I like him. But he was always a childhood favorite of mine. Same with Quinlan Vos. I think that all of these characters that I've mentioned are right there. It's just they're not in that top tier. And I think that's just lack of seeing their characters be portrayed in live action or animated. Same with Plo Koon. So with the honorable mentions out the way, let's get to number 1. Space Jesus, the man who never loses, ObiWan Kenobi. And in my opinion, when I think of Jedi, I think of ObiWan Kenobi. Very true to the order. You can argue, you know, his relationship with Satine. He said if she would have said the words, he would have left the order, but he didn't. He had the chosen one just thrown at him because Qui-Gon passed away. So now Obi-Wan has to take care of the chosen one, the highest midichlorian count user that we've seen in Star Wars. Now he has to take him on as his apprentice. And with a lot of the Jedi in the Order, the only ones I could think of that could maybe master this is Master Yoda, Master Windu, maybe Quinlan Vos. You know, taking on a character like this with a high midichlorian count could have helped outside of the Jedi Order. Taking on Anakin young, Obi-Wan was able to bring him up through the Order and ultimately got him to be the youngest Jedi member to be on the council without being a master. And of course, the whole controversy, you know, with Anakin not being a master, being on the council not a master, was a joke.
Get your ass on, boy.
It's never happened before. Obi-Wan always wanted to bring the light out of everyone, wanted to be very positive at all times, and he found some things very, you know, amusing with his humor. Didn't like droids, didn't like blasters, you know, some of the little things like that makes a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi great. Obi-Wan has the best defensive lightsaber skills in all of Star Wars. I can't really think of anyone else. Maybe Count Dooku, you know, especially when he was a Sith. The tactics that he would use definitely would make him, you know, incredible at dueling, but it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's gone against Count Dooku. He fell both times, but definitely didn't lose, though. That's the thing. And then if we look at, you know, him going against Anakin 3 separate times and beating him twice physically, but then at the end, he beats him through the Force. He's like, if you strike me down, I will be stronger than you could ever imagine. Basically giving himself up to the Force. He's stronger than Darth Vader could ever be. And plus the way, you know, he taught Anakin, takes the blame for failing Anakin turning to the dark side, but that was basically the chemical for since the beginning. Anakin was made to be turned to the dark side, bring balance to the Force ultimately at the end. And, you know, that's not really on Obi-Wan 100%. There are some things, you know, Obi-Wan wasn't ready to be a master yet. He was ready for the trials, but that was right before taking on Anakin Skywalker to be his apprentice. So if you look at Obi-Wan's character, you got to think like all of these things that, you know, steamroll on top of his character makes him a lot stronger, you know, on top of his defensive skills, the way he used the Force. Also very smart, being the apprentice of Quon Jinn. He gets some of that wisdom. And we also see that Obi-Wan had his times as a teenager, you know, being kind of ornery and just wanting to do things on his own. You can't blame him though. But in my opinion, Obi-Wan is the best Jedi that there is. Henceforth, he's number 1 on my list. I didn't really want to dive way too deep into some of these characters, just giving some little explanations on why they are in the places they are in my list. And yeah, like I said, this is my opinion. You know, you could be like, yeah, you know, like Mace Windu could be on that list. And I did leave him off as an honorable mention just because I feel like his story hasn't been told completely yet. There's a lot more that can, you know, maybe get him to a 6, 7 spot on my list. But if we're talking top 5, you know, I got Qui-Gon Jinn, Luke Skywalker, Master Yoda, Anakin Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's the list. But yes, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. I feel like this video could get a lot of comments, you know, asking, you know, why are these characters in this certain spot? Or maybe you agree with me. But until next time, guys, I'm Claim Brandalorian, and we'll see you in the next top 5 video. I'm out.